Have you ever wondered why so many edited volumes fall apart before they're ever submitted? And what does it actually take to turn a strong idea into a coherent, collaborative collection? Hey, co-authors. In this episode, we explore how to create, submit, and publish edited volumes. We discuss how the challenge of an edited collection is its emphasis on organization, coordination, and management. So, let's dive in. So a couple years ago, I had a couple of colleagues reach out to me and invite me to write a chapter for an edited volume that they were doing. And honestly, whenever they reached out to me, I was kind of like, the two of you do not have the strongest track record of getting things done, nor do I think of myself as necessarily a very well-known expert in the particular thing that you're trying to put together. But your friends, your colleagues, your people that I know and that I like, and also you do need people to fill out the edited volume. So sure, why not? So I write the chapter, send it in to them. They're like, oh, this is cool. We'll get back to you whenever we have your next round of revisions. Great. So 2 months go by, 6 months go by, 8 months go by. After about a year, I'm like, okay, hey guys, how's that book coming along? Oh, yeah. Here's your feedback. And so you haven't talked to me for nearly a year at this point, but all of a sudden you have feedback for me. Oh, okay, that's not great, but whatever. So I look at the feedback. Of course, there's not much, mostly grammatical and line by line editorial stuff. Fine, whatever. Send it back into them. Another 6 months go by. Hey, how's that book coming along? Oh, well, one of the editors had to bow out. They had other professional obligations. Like, okay, well, I know where this is heading. 6 months later after that, it's okay, well, we're way overdue on our deadline for the publisher. And they've cut off our contract at this point. So we're going to try to do something else with it, maybe turn it into an OER, do something with it. But at this point, we're kind of in limbo. Like, well, okay, I'm just going to go ahead and take this off my CV. This has been a huge waste of my time. Thanks for nothing. I guess we can continue to see each other at conferences and reminisce about grad school and laugh about the old days, but honestly, never going to work with you again. This series of events is actually pretty common whenever it comes to people putting together edited volumes. I think a lot of people have this idea in their head that, oh, there's a topic that I wanted to write about. There's something that's going on that's very pressing. There's a new perspective, a new framework, a new philosophy, something that's come along that's really piqued my interest. But I don't really feel like I have the chops to write about this myself. I know I'll get other people to write it for me and I'll quote unquote edit that volume. And that way I get to have a cool conversation and read cool things and slap my name on it as the editor, but I don't have to do the hard work of actually coming up with the intellectual labor of contributing anything. So as you can imagine, edited volumes are a pretty mixed bag. On one hand, they're repositories of some of the best work in your discipline. They are places where very influential pieces from very high-profile scholars will come. They're also places where scholarship goes to die because no one reads them. And so I want to talk about how to make sure that you, A, finish your edited book, because otherwise you've not only wasted your time, but probably a lot of other contributors' time as well, but also how to make sure that once you get it published, how it gets in the hands of the people who are going to read it and cite it and use it in their own work. Okay, so let's dive in. Are you interested in mastering scholarly writing, developing productivity, and increasing impact, all while staying healthy? Then welcome to the Publishing Academic Research Podcast. My name is Dr. Kyle Ruddick, and I'm a full professor and writing coach who's dedicated to making sure you break through whatever is stopping you from reaching your scholarly goals. I meet so many scholars who have creative, innovative, and daring ideas, but can never seem to get those projects from proposals to print. I want you to get your work in the hands of people who will read it and appreciate it. So let's get into this week's big idea. So before I get into the different steps whenever it comes to putting together an edited project, the first thing that I want to say before anything else is that edited volumes are not less work than authored monographs. If you have done any collaborative work on anything in academia, whether that's a chapter, an article, a grant, anything, there is a 99% possibility that it is either more work because you are not only having to do the work, but also wrangling your co-authors, or it's not a lot of work because you're not really contributing anything in your dead weight. It's very rare that people go into a project and they divide it equally or they divide it fairly. Everyone contributes their meaningful part. Everyone gets their part done on time. It is very rare of that level of syncopation among various scholars. So if you approach edited volumes with the idea of, oh, I'm just going to have a dozen people write really smart things, they're all going to get it done on time, and then I'm going to get to reap the rewards of putting my name on as the editor, but I get to sit back and not really contribute anything, I'm going to tell you right now, your book's probably not going to go anywhere, or it's not going to get read. The number one thing about being an editor, whether that's a journal editor or a book editor or anything else, is your ability to manage other people and other people's time. As academics, all of us are extremely overburdened. We are writing too much, we're teaching too much, we're doing too much service, we are spread too thin. And so whenever someone agrees to write a chapter for your edited book, that is vying with all the other jobs and all the other responsibilities that they have. And depending on the level of rigor of your edited volume, the outlet and the other contributors and all the other things that go into it, which we'll talk about, there's a non-zero chance that their contribution to your edited book is actually not counting for that much in their tenure and promotion or other types of metrics for their productivity. And so that being the case, if you are the editor, you have to be on top of all of your stuff, because if you're not on top of it, then authors are going to get squirrely. They're going to start doing weird things. They're not going to meet deadlines. They're going to turn in things that are not what you wanted. And the next thing you know, you're just going to have a hot mess on your hands instead of a coherent vision across all of the contributions towards whatever it is that you want to talk. So let's break down then, what are the different steps of putting together an edited volume? The first thing that you need to do, as we've talked about in last week's episode, whenever it comes to writing a commercial textbook, is that you need to have a pretty clear idea of what it is that you want to talk about. And that can either be methodological, theoretical, or topical. So you might have an edited volume on new methods of qualitative inquiry, or explorations of theory of planned behavior, or emerging trends in authoritarianism, right? Like each one of those, method, theory, topic, right? All of those are different unifying themes that can come together in order for you to have a volume that people want to read. Now, once you've landed on an idea, that's not the only thing that you have to do. You need to make sure that you're having a unique contribution to whatever it is that you're wanting to talk about. There are thousands of books on qualitative methods, on theory of planned behavior, on authoritarianism. What makes yours different? What's going to make yours one that other people want to read? Is it based on a certain type of approach? Is it based on who it is, the big name people that you have in your contributors? Is it because you yourself are a big name person? Like, there are reasons why people might read that work. Even if there's other work that's out there on this topic, you have to have a very clear vision of what that market looks like. How saturated is it? And then how are you differentiating yourself from those other outlets? Once you do that, you're going to want to build your contributor. There are a couple of ways that you can do this. So one way to do this is to have an open call. If your discipline has a listserv, so mine, for example, has one called Com Notes. You could post to listservs like that and give an open call for people to contribute things. Another way of doing that is to invite people. So if you have a topic that you think that if certain people lent their expertise to that, that would either make the volume stronger from an academic standpoint or stronger in the sense of its marketability, or both. You can do a combination of those things. So what a lot of editors do is they might have a general call that goes out. They'll select the best ones, and then 2, 3, 4, maybe half a dozen other contributors who they have specifically invited, because usually an editor has some expertise in that particular field of study. And so they should be able to reach out to a half a dozen of their colleagues that are writing in that field and get them to contribute as well. And that way you get kind of a blend of new or emerging voices, or voices that perhaps have not been heard as much, as well as those more established scholars. You want to make sure that as you're looking at your contributors, that you have a diversity of perspectives, and that diversity of thought can be theoretical, can be methodological, it can be topical, be the types of diversity of the scholars that you have there. You don't want to have what's the analogous to the dreaded manel, right? The panel that's all made up of white guys. Like you don't want that for your book. You want to make sure that there's a diversity of scholars that are being represented. And also you want to make sure that in that diversity that you're not pigeonholing people. Like, don't have a volume of 10 or 12 contributors, all of whom are white, And then you have one Black person that's like, oh, and this person's going to write the chapter on Black feminist thought, right? Okay, good job, right? Like you have the token scholar writing the sort of token theoretical tradition, and then you have the other 11 scholars doing the like more mainstream work. Like that's not a good look either. You want to make sure that the way that you're integrating all of those perspectives is one that creates a coherent whole that is moving your discipline forward, and not just, these are the things that we were always talking about anyway. Oh, and by the way, here's a couple of other scholars. They're going to be in here, but you don't have to listen to them. So really making sure that you're doing a good job of representing all those different perspectives. And as you're doing that, what I would suggest you do is once you've built that contributor list and you've gotten the people that you know that you want to get, either whenever you do your more general call, if you do it that way, or you do it as a blend of choosing people and doing an open call, I would suggest that you ask people for an abstract of up to, say, 300, 400, 500 words, depending on how much you want. You don't want to go much more above 500 words. And the reason for that is that you don't want someone to look at this and go, oh man, I don't want to do a lot of work and end up not getting accepted. Or, oh, this is a lot of work and I don't have time to do this. But you also want to make sure that you're getting enough from them that you're not surprised or taken off guard whenever they submit their chapter. You want to know with enough specificity about what it is they would actually write about. You also want to have enough there that you can ascertain what their writing style and quality is like, and whether that meets the rigor and stylistic tone that you're looking for. You might get multiple abstracts or proposals, however you want to call it, from people that want to write about the exact same topic. Well, maybe it would be nice to have multiple people on the same topic to get different perspectives. Or maybe you're like, well, I just want one person to write about this, and so I'm going to pick the best of the three to include. And then I've got chapters for other types of perspectives. All this is to say that that abstract or proposal can really be a good place to figure out where all the puzzle pieces need to fit together before you're getting full-blown chapters from people, which allows you in turn to create a more coherent whole for your book. So the next step, and for some folks, I would say that you actually might make this step 2. I'm going to call step 3, but you might actually have it as step 2. And the reason for that is because in step 3, you're going to be proposing this book to publishers. Now, I say it might be step 2 because sometimes what you want to do is you have enough of a reputation, or you have commitments from 4, 5, 6 people who are of sufficient reputation themselves that you can put together a proposal and then shop that to publishers, get a commitment from a publishing house, and then do the work to get a more full call to invite more people beyond the initial smaller group of people that you get a commitment from. So that way the publisher knows that you've got something going on here. So sometimes you get those commitments first, and then you go to a publisher, and then you do a more open call. Sometimes you might do the open call, and then you shop the entire project to publishers. Really kind of depends on what your disciplinary and your publishing house norms are. I would say for myself, at this point in my career, if I go to a publisher, I can talk to them and pitch an idea and get that idea accepted, and then work on a contributor list and start meeting and talking with folks. The me from 10 years ago wouldn't have been able to do that. I would have said that to an acquisition editor at a publishing house, and they would have laughed at me because they were like, you're no one. Like, no one knows who you are. So you can't really promise that you're going to be able to get 10, 12, 15 good contributions because no one knows who you are. And honestly, 10 years ago, you were still developing your craft. You don't even know what good scholarship is at this point, right? You're still trying to figure that out yourself. So why would I green light a project of you editing other people's work whenever you haven't really even established that you yourself can get things done by yourself? So all this is to say, kind of depends on where you are in your career. But whenever it comes time for you to target your publisher and try to figure out where you want to go, there's a couple of things that you want to keep in mind. The first thing is, whenever it comes to edited volumes, you can have different types of markets that you might be trying to reach. So some edited volumes are much like commercial textbooks. And so they are meant to be adopted by professors, bought by students, and used in a particular course. And so if that is the type of work that you're doing, then you want to find a publishing house that is more oriented towards commercial publishing. Even though you're doing an edited volume, you want to have the type of marketing team and outreach and support that a commercial textbook requires. And so if that's what you're thinking of, you might want to give a listen to last week's episode, talk more about commercial textbook writing. But a lot of edited volumes are not for students. They are scholarly collections that are written for other scholars. And so here I think primarily of like handbooks. So like a handbook of qualitative research or a handbook of intercultural communication, right? Those types of handbooks, usually done by larger publishing houses like Routledge, Taylor Francis, Sage, Wiley, Elsevier, and other types of folks. Those types of outlets are written almost exclusively for other scholars. Yes, you might, as a scholar, you might request that through your library. You might assign a chapter or two to your students, but it's not usually expected that students buy those things. And the price point really reflects that. Those books are usually sold to university libraries. These publishing houses usually already have contracts with those systems and have a known demand for those types of books and those types of outlets, and they price them exorbitantly high, $200, $300, $400, because the market is not for a particular student. The market is for a library to use it, who then checks it out to students or faculty or other folks. So all that is to say, as you are targeting your publishing house, you need to recognize that you are not going to have a runaway bestseller with your edited volume, especially if you're writing a handbook. That's just not how the market for these types of textbooks go. The market is instead pretty immediate. Usually in the first year or two, most, if not all of your sales of your book will occur, because most of those sales are with libraries that the publishing house already has contracts with. That being the case, you will know your contract that you have with your publishing house should have, and the acquisition editor that you talk to should have a pretty good idea of how much money you stand to make with your edited volume. They'll probably say, oh, usually people who write this type of book with this type of author list, they usually are looking at $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 in royalties over the course of 2 or 3 years. Again, you're not making a bestseller here. You're not going to have a runaway paycheck based on this type of work that you're doing here. You will be compensated, but nothing to write home about. That being said, you should be looking at those different contracts from the acquisition editor. You can bargain with them. You can say, hey, this place was going to offer me this much. This other place was going to offer me this other amount, but I really like you the most. I felt like, we had a really good relationship whenever we talked on the phone. Is there a way that you can match their offer? And sometimes they'll do that. Sometimes they can't. But, never hurts to ask. Anyone who gets mad at you or gets huffy at you for asking for more money or trying to bargain with folks whenever you actually have multiple legitimate offers, those are not people that you want to work with, because they're not professionals. Professionals know that people get multiple offers. Professionals know that you can bargain based on multiple offers. People who are not serious, people who are jerks, who are not smart, who are not good at their jobs, those are the type of people who are insecure, people who are threatened by the idea of bargaining. Those are not people that you need to work with or that you want to work with in this type of scenario. What's most important, though, as you're looking at that, you want to look at who these publishing houses, what their typical outlet is, and what kind of guarantees do they have on either the marketing side, if you're doing a more commercial edited volume, or on the more locked-in demand side, if you're doing a more scholarly book, about what type of compensation package you'd be looking at. So at this point, you should be writing your formal prospectus or proposal to the publishing house about your project for them to read over, and then ultimately give you a contract based on what you've written as to the deliverable of your product. Because at this point, you might have been talking to an acquisitions editor. You might have had a lot of different ideas, a lot of back and forth. So now it's really important for you to nail all that down. A lot of the stuff that's in this proposal are going to be the same things that we talked about last week, right? So description of the project, what's the market need, how do you see other competitor books in this area, how are you doing something different? All those things that were in the commercial textbook are going to be a part of this. The only thing that's really going to change is that in this case, you're going to have a contributor list, and you're going to want to have what their credentials are and why they're important for your particular project. So what you're really trying to show here is what they bring in terms of their name, because that name translates into marketability of the book. Bigger name scholars, more established scholars are going to command more respect and thus more demand than those who are lesser known. And it's not to say that you only want to work with big names necessarily, but it is to say that you want to have at least a few of those as draws. So that way, people who adopt or use or read the book for those big name people then have a chance to stumble upon those lesser known people who might not have been read otherwise, but now all of a sudden have a chance to have their voices heard. If you have, at this point, those proposals or abstracts, you might add them to this overall proposal as well. I would say even if they don't require it, it's always a good thing for them to have it. It just shows that you're on top of your game. Again, I can't tell you how many times I've worked with academics and they just have no follow through. They overpromise and underdeliver because they have too much to do. They are not good at their time management. They're not good at being organized. And so, as you can imagine, in an industry like publishing that relies on academic labor in order to thrive, they've seen it all, man. Like they've seen everything from people who are absolutely on top of their game to people who are 2 years behind and, just one disaster catastrophe away from being drummed out of academia altogether. So you want to be the former, right? You want to be the one who's on top of your stuff. And so anything that you can do to show that, like having a clear proposal or prospectus, especially if they have a format or guidelines or a form that you can fill out, making sure that you're following all those things to a T, having the type of information like proposals or abstracts, timelines, all those things make it easier for a person who might not really have a relationship with you yet to see you as someone who is credible and on top of your game and who will deliver the product that you have said that you will deliver to them. Whenever it comes time actually overseeing the work of an edited volume, I will just say right now, however long you think it should take, add 6 months to it. Put that into your proposal. Do not try to overpromise on how quickly you can get it done. It is better for you to say this will take a year and a half and to have it done exactly within a year and a half than for you to say, I'll get it done in a year, and then it takes you a year and a half. And the reason for that is because a publishing house has set times for publishing work. They have things in a queue, and then they base their marketing off those queue times of when each project is supposed to go to the printing press. So if you end up being weeks or months overdue, that can screw everything up down the line. And what will end up happening is that you will lose your place in the queue and you'll go to the very back of the line. It's not like, oh, well, I was 10th in a queue of 20, and whenever it came up to my turn, I wasn't ready, and so they bumped me to 11th or 12th. No, now you're 21st, right? So now you're all the way to the back of the line. And that has all sorts of problems, right? If you're writing about something very topical or timely, well, now you've missed the scoop. Other people are going to be able to publish their books before you. Maybe you missed the deadline, the window for whenever people normally review and adopt textbooks for the next year. So now your sales are going to be down. There's so many problems that happen whenever you don't hit your deadlines. So you want to make sure that you, in this case, underpromise and overdeliver on your stuff. You'll also find that if you haven't already in your career, that trying to get a collection of academics to contribute all of their stuff on the same time is pretty much like herding cats. It never ceases to amaze me whenever I go to conferences and I hear other academics talk about how students don't turn things in on time and that they don't respect deadlines. And in the real world, you wouldn't be able to get away with that. Dude, miss me with all that. I cannot tell you how many times I've worked with highly prolific academics who just for the life of them cannot meet a deadline. I mean, I had a project a few years ago where the person was invited in February. Their first draft was due in June. They missed that deadline. I saw them at a conference in November. I was like, hey, would love to see that chapter of yours. They're like, oh, okay, cool. I'll get it to you. They finally turn in their first draft in like March. Now, everyone else is 2 or 3 revisions into their chapters. This person is just now getting feedback on their first draft. I don't understand it. To me, if I was that late on something, I would never be that late on something. It's either I get things done or I just bow out. Like if I can't get something done, I would at least have the good grace to look someone in the eye and just go, look, this isn't going to happen. I'm really sorry. I know you were counting on me, but I can't do this. But I would not string someone along for nearly a year and then put everything in jeopardy of being behind because I somehow feel like I deserve extra time, I guess, because I'm a big name person. I don't get it. But you're going to deal with that. You're going to deal with people's personalities, people's egos. You're going to give them feedback. They're going to not like your feedback. They're going to get persnickety about that. There's all sorts of things that can go wrong in the process. You want to build in for that. You also want to build in for dropouts. So if you think you want to have a 12 chapter book, invite 14 chapters worth of material. Worst case scenario, you're going to end up with a couple of extra chapters. It's not going to happen though. You're going to have someone drop out. It happens all the time. Sometimes they will be kind enough to tell you that they're dropping out. Other times the deadline passes them by so much that you're just like, yeah, sorry, dude, this is going to be a no-go for you. But build in the fact that you're going to have dropouts. You will also realize that an edited volume is only as good as the editor. You might think to yourself that I have a list of good ideas and good contributors, but at the end of the day, it will be up to you as the editor to make sure that those chapters are coherent, both as individuals and as a collection towards whatever it is that you're writing about, that the quality is even, that you don't have really, really strong chapters sitting next to really, really weak or shallow chapters. And finally, you need to make sure that you have developed a process by which you're going to set deadlines for people, get them feedback on time, have them do revisions, however much that is, and then get you your next volume, and then going back and forth until that quality is achieved. In addition to being organized about the authors and being organized about your own timelines, if you want to have reviewers for your book, you're going to have to be organized with them too. Now, some publishing houses don't require reviewers, or if they do, they require those reviewers after you've turned in the entire project, because those reviews are more about engaging the quality of the product as a whole, and also on some level marketing that product by way of asking people to read and review and write nice little snippets about the book. But if you have an actual review board of your book, and sometimes collections do that, then it's very important for you to be on top of them as well. So making sure that you're giving them clear guidelines of how long they have to do reviews. If you have things that you're looking for in particular from your authors, then you might even have a rubric for them. Whatever it might be, making sure that if a reviewer ghosts you or doesn't get their stuff done on time, that you have backup reviewers. All those things are going to be important. For my own self, with the book that I'm working on, we didn't have a group of outside reviewers. We had an editorial team of 5 of us, and we just reviewed everything. So you got 5 reviewers. They were the same 5 reviewers, but that might not be the case for you all. You might want to have an actual review board. And I've worked on books that have been like that. And I will say it's, on one hand, it's very challenging because now you're working with a list of authors, 10, 20 of them, and also a list of reviewers, 10 or 20 of them. It can quickly get overwhelming. On the other hand, there's something to be said about the quality of that, because you've mimicked in a lot of ways the quality that a journal has. And so you might want to go that route in an edited volume. Some people like using Google Docs. Some people like using emails. Whatever way you do it, it doesn't really matter how you do it. What matters is that you're consistent in doing it and that you're on top of it. I, for example, kept an Excel spreadsheet of who my contributors were, where they are in the revision process, what dates either I told them to have their next version of their essay due to me by, or if they had asked for an extension, what date they had told me. All of that was in one place, because otherwise, with the nearly 30 contributors that we had for this handbook, I just wouldn't have been able to keep it all in my head. You need to be able to keep organized, because again, at the end of the day, an edited collection is only as good as you are an editor. And I would say editors are only as good as they are organized and on top of all of their authors. Once you have gotten all of your chapters, you've gotten the feedback back, everything looks like it's copacetic. Now it's off to the races. You're going to be submitting this to the publisher. They most likely have a portal for you to do that. So our publisher, for example, Wiley, has their own portal. You upload all of your documents to it, and then that goes to their editing team. Your publishing house is probably going to have something similar to that. At that point, you'll also want to have written your introduction to the volume, a conclusion maybe. You might have a glossary of terms. You also might ask a big name scholar in your field to write a foreword. So maybe there was someone who's a really big name who didn't have the time or the bandwidth to contribute to the edited collection itself. Maybe they'll write a 2, 3, 4, 5 page foreword. So that way they can still be in there, but it's a little bit less of an ask. Once the final step of an edited volume is making sure that it actually gets used. And again, is making sure that it gets marketed and adopted. Now, again, it might be that you have a publishing house and a project that is more geared towards libraries, in which you don't really have to do a lot of marketing. You don't have to do a lot of promotion in terms of generating sales, because those sales are already accounted for in large part. Every sale that you might make to a student or to a faculty member for your book is kind of icing on the cake, but not really necessary. On the other hand, if you're doing a more commercial edited book, you're going to want to make sure that you're doing a lot of promotion of your materials. But either way, you want to make sure that people know about it, posting this to social media, talking about it in listservs, doing a book launch, maybe at a local coffee shop, reaching out to Centers for Excellence in Teaching and Learning on your university and doing a book greeting there, trying to make connections with Centers for Excellence in Teaching and Learning at other universities, seeing if you can get speakerships or do workshops based off of it. There's different ways that you can promote your book. And the more that you do that, the better. as I said, for commercial textbooks, a lot of people don't like to think about it like this, but a collection like this is not like a journal article. It is not something that you write just for your peers to be able to access through their universities. A book like this can be accessed by all sorts of people. It is a product you are trying to sell, and the more that you sell it, the better that it does, and the more likely you are to get asked to do a second or third edition of the book. I would say the last thing is that for some folks, a edited book is a one and done thing. I have a topic I want to write about. I've got a collection of folks. Wham, bam, we're done. Cool. But especially if you're doing handbooks or if you're doing something that's not topical, but is instead theoretical or methodological, you might be able to develop multiple editions off that. And each iteration, each edition should be stronger because whenever you write your first edited collection, you probably have, let's say, 20 or 30 people. Maybe half of them were really strong contributions or really good to work with, or hopefully both. Those are the folks that you invite again to write edition 2. You drop all the dead wood off and get rid of the folks that don't get their stuff done on time or who don't remain active in that area of study or whatever it is. You have a core of people that you know are really, really good, and you can invite new people, new voices into your second edition, and so on with every successive editions. So as you're going forward, you're getting more and more momentum with every successive iteration of the book. Overall, like I said at the beginning of this, the primary barrier that most people face when doing edited collections is that they vastly underestimate how much time and work they are. People seem to think that I'm going to just get 10 or 20 people to do all the writing for me. They're going to get it done on time. Everything's going to be just fine. And then I'm going to slap my name on it and then it'll be published and it'll be done. But doing a good edited volume takes a lot of work. It takes organization like we've talked about. It takes intellectual work, a relational aspect as you're working with people in the capacity as an editor for their work. Because unlike a journal review where you might be anonymous, now you are known to the author and they know you. And so that can also introduce all sorts of issues as well. So there's just a lot of work that goes into an edited volume. But whenever they get done, a good edited volume is one that has a significant impact on your field of study because it's filled with people who are knowledgeable, who are well known in that area. It's been curated in such ways to address a very specific type of audience, and it contributes to the knowledge of that area and becomes a touchstone for scholarship in that area. And I want that for you. I don't want you to write an edited volume that goes to collect dust on a shelf, or you end up having a box of free copies that you can't sell, much less give away, and it ends up being a huge waste of time and energy. Again, as academics, we're asked to do so much already. There's no sense in us creating more work for ourselves by writing things that no one wants to read. So having, I think, a very clear vision of what it is that you want to do and how you want to do that and be on top of the organizational aspect is the route to you having something that people are going to read and cite and love. Okay, so I think that's going to wrap it up for me. I'm sorry if my voice is a little bit wonky this time. I was just at a conference from, last Wednesday until Sunday. Had a great time. I got to bring some undergraduate students who are presenting their research. I always love to do that because for many of them, it's the first time they've ever been in a professional setting like that. And so just getting to see them, being able to interact with other professors, other students from across the United States and really kind of just geek out and present their work and learn from others it's always such a joy. And so it's very fulfilling, but at the same time, I'm very tired now and my voice is almost gone. So I appreciate you all listening. Next week, I'm going to talk about the final part of this series, which is about how to put together a proposal for a monograph for a scholarly book. And then we'll be off to our next topic after that. Okay. So thank you so much for listening, and I will see you in next week's episode.
Hey, co-authors. What's stopping your best ideas from becoming your next big publication? Brilliant research shouldn't die in your drafts folder. Now's the time to bridge the gap between the possible and the published. You can support this podcast by subscribing to it, leaving a positive review, assigning it to your classes, or sharing it with a colleague. Let me know what I can do to make this the best podcast resource for you. And if you'd like to know more about my writing coach services, then you can find my information in the podcast description and set up an appointment. I'll be back next week with another episode. But until then, keep healthy, keep writing, and don't let reviewer 2 get you down.